What did I tell you today's Dharma talk title was?
Sleeping behind concepts.
Really?
Maybe.
Okay, we'll do that. Sleeping behind concepts. So basically that's just a title that gives me, I don't know, an excuse or reason to talk about the way we work with concepts. And what I'm saying in that sleeping, I'm saying we kind of, once we get an idea about something or a concept about something, whatever it is, coming, going, I like it, I don't like it, all of those things, we tend to stick an idea to it and substitute our opinion or idea or our concept about that for what it's actually supposedly pointing to. We're actually using it's like you picked up a road map and we're following the road map and decided that was much more interesting than where you're going. And you just stop, you just get fascinated by the road map. You get fascinated by the concept itself or the idea, projection, opinion, what have you. Belief is another form that tends to take. And what I'm saying also is I'm not saying that that is incorrect. You shouldn't do that. I'm not trying to boss you around. On the other hand, if you would like to see more deeply into what is happening with you and what's happening in the world and why or how to work with emotions that are rumbling around down here and occasionally get triggered by outside events and suddenly spring forth, as sometimes the old metaphor for that is making a mountain out of a molehill. We all have that at some point, have something where something happens and suddenly we're really upset. Maybe the balanced response might be there. I don't particularly care for that, but sometimes we tend to go overboard and get really, really mad about something that is a molehill. So concepts, ideas, menus, recipes, slogans, all of those things can help us, but sometimes we tend to clamp down on there. And the extreme version of that, of course, is right and wrong, thinking that there's some things that are right, some things that are wrong. And that's a relative idea. We're not saying that, stealing isn't wrong or that murder isn't wrong, but we're saying before we jump into that situation, let's take a broader view. Let's look as broadly as we can at any situation and, give it the benefit of the doubt. Actually allow something to breathe a little bit before you immediately lay on our ideas, our concepts, our determinations, our explanations, our elaborations. Just like in the meditation instruction this morning is to train, what we're training our mind to do is just to see more clearly. It's that simple. Nothing to believe in. I don't believe this, nor do I disbelieve it. I don't believe anything or disbelieve anything. It's much more comfortable not to have some kind of belief going on. And it's also, the belief tends to be a very fancy, fuzzy kind of concept. It's because it looks like it looks like there's some truth behind that, maybe. But if you go into that, you basically are saying, I'd rather just see my belief about something rather than look and see what it is. I'm going to settle for the belief. I got the belief. It's like we trade, and when we have conversations with each other, we'll make a statement about something. And so, what do you believe? We just, if you ask me that, I'll probably say not much. And it isn't that I have been through this probably hundreds of times by now. It's not that there isn't some belief that's going on all the time. Like I believe. Is that your phone? Yeah, so I don't have to believe that's your phone. That is your phone. But something a little bit distance, like just as an example, I believe Kozan's dog Casey is in the other room. Why? I just saw her a few minutes ago. But somebody could have stolen her. You might not have a dog anymore. She might be gone. And to go the other direction, that's called paranoia. Without any proof, we're freaking out about something. So paranoid, that's when you're always going to check and see if Casey's there, see if your phone is there, afraid somebody's going to steal it or something. And of course, there's a lot of other versions of that. So some concepts, especially in our spiritual tradition are very, very powerful and very necessary to help us see this tradition. 2,500 years of this, it's a cumulative tradition, not a revealed tradition. So someone didn't come from outer space, and I have the truth. I'm on the right hand side of the guy who made all this. So you need to talk to me. Rather, it was a human being, the Buddha, who awoke to the nature of life, the nature of suffering, and the nature of being alive. What is that? So it's a non-theistic and a cumulative tradition rather than revealed. Even the revealed traditions are cumulative in the sense that, not that I'm a scholar in this area, but the Apostle Paul in the Christian tradition sure did a lot of additions. If you read that, his letter to the Corinthians and so on like that is a he don't want to tell you what really is how this all works. So you have a spokesman, just like in our tradition, it's not a revealed person, but it's a person who understood something, passed it on to his homies, to his relatives, to his friends, to anyone who would listen to him, and then they in turn thought about that and passed it on to others, and people began to meditate. There began to become a sangha or community. And then after he passed on, then there was all kinds of schools sprung up that wanted to explain what they thought the Buddha meant. This has happened also in other religions, different styles of practicing the Muslim faith, the Christian faith, and so on. So concepts. The point I'm trying to make, and it is a point, is don't get rid of your concepts. Don't stop believing in things or disbelieving or anything. Just be aware that you're doing it. It's always about awareness, never about coming to a conclusion about anything. Anytime you come to a conclusion about anything, and sometimes it's necessary to have conclusions, but anytime you come to a conclusion, all investigation stops. And we just, oh, okay, I know what that is. No more, but that situation is usually constantly changing, especially when we're talking about our heart, or our mind, our heart, or our mind, our heart. Where is the mind? Where is the heart? Can you find it? You should look, rather than have a concept of it, a concept. So hiding, there's maybe not a deliberate hiding, but there's a way of using concepts to protect us from anything that seems to be out of our control. Again, not wrong, not to correct someone. I'm just saying, be aware of that. Be aware of the way in which you object to things based on your belief about something, rather than actually investigating. Maybe give that the benefit of the doubt and look more deeply into that. You may not have time. Sometimes you might have to dedicate your life to something in order to get to the bottom of it, so to speak, using that kind of a metaphor. There might not be any bottom. So like the concept, pretty fancy concept, and I'll paraphrase it, unless perception or consciousness, if it does not reside, or if consciousness or awareness, here's the awareness, I'm giving you kind of a hand and arm signals here, unless consciousness, this stuff where things are coming in, smelling, hearing, tasting, touching, thinking, that's the hardest one to see. Where do the thoughts come from? We know where the sounds come from, sound. We know where the sights come from, light reflecting off from apparent phenomena, and so on. We could go on and on and get pretty silly about it. What was I going to say?
Unless consciousness.
Yeah, thank you. So unless consciousness or perception, there's kind of a perceiver quality and something that is perceived, unless that particular situation resides in perception only, then the twofold grasping will not cease to operate. This is from Vasubandhu. So what I was saying is unless you can just emphasize or just see that this is just a perception, I'm just seeing, just hearing, just smelling, just tasting, just touching, just thinking, very simple, one-shot deal. Keep it very, very simple. Unless the consciousness or the awareness or the perception resides just in that, the twofold grasping. In other words, grasping at things, either grasping at to lock down on them, or grasping at them to reject them, go to war with them, or shutting them off, which is another form of very subtle form of grasping, hiding from things that is not actually over there. It's your perception. And also twofold, meaning objects and subjects. So the subject, the identity that you think you have as a separate being, there is a separation going on, but that's fairly superficial. That's relative truth. The ultimate truth is not something else. It is not separate from the subject. If that's not seen, then we continue to fight with people, fight with each other, fight with our neighbors, fight with our friends, fight with our politics. And it's just on now. You can see. I don't need to go into that. So this is why I, as a Dharma teacher, emphasize and encourage everyone to train your mind. You don't have to be a Buddhist. You don't have to ever come here again. Well, you should come back once in a while. But I'm saying, trying to make a point that you could actually just train your mind. There's nothing to believe or disbelieve. You could just sit down, hold still, an hour, maybe more a day, sit down and watch the way your mind keeps making up shit over and over and over. It's just like a motorboat they're going on, running all the time. When you go to sleep, it's running. When you wake up, it's not going. Unnecessary, extra confusion based on lack of awareness about the fundamental nature of what this world is about. The theistic tradition, of course, doesn't really want you to investigate anything, not making them wrong, because some people, the only spiritual path they can have is to have someone higher posit a deity, a god, a lord, something like that. So a little bit of that is okay. Not saying, but quite often people tend to not only go overboard, but then make everybody else who isn't doing what they're doing wrong or incorrect, and then making them the enemy, and then we're right back to war and peace. So whatever the concept is like a tool that you actually use. And then when you use the tool, then you set the tool aside. You don't constantly run around with a hammer in your hand just in case you run into a nail. It's not that funny, is it? Kind of funny. I'll take the laughter. All the laughter I can get. Sure, that's silly, but it's kind of like that. It's kind of like we're carrying our ideas, our opinions, and everything around with us all the time. What am I saying? Be aware. Be aware. More awareness, less belief, less opinion, less not to get rid of it, but just a less of an emphasis on that. Kind of use it if you need it. If someone yells, you're in a building and someone upstairs yells fire. You probably should believe that. You should probably give that the benefit of the doubt. I think there could be fire up there, or I need to get out or help other people get out of the building. A simple metaphor, but it could be like that. So we have to bring our awareness, our intelligence forward and see what is true, rather than project onto something our concepts, opinions, and ideas about what it is. And actually, you might as well be putting the metaphor is to put a hood over your and just have all of your instructions about what life is about, who you are, what you believe, what you don't believe, written on the inside of the thing. That we don't have to run into any surprising situations. You're always covered. Questions? Goes out.
When you were doing your meditation instruction, you said something about observing subconscious gossip.
Yes.
If it's subconscious, then what can we observe?
It becomes conscious. If you look that direction, if you just look at what is happening in the mind, it starts to arise. But it won't arise if you're distracted by your thought process and you're figuring things out and trying to figure out what color to paint your kitchen cabinets. You could do that, But you could also spend some time seeing how the consciousness works, see how that works. Subconscious gossip just means just a way of talking about a lot of buried stuff. You could say that, and the technical term in our teaching is alaya vijnana, which is incredibly vast and complicated consciousness, where there is no self, there is no identity there. More?
That was helpful. So if you see thoughts or jargon,
Yeah.
and endeavor to just observe, so if that quiets down, that's the only way to see the subconscious gossip.
Yeah, it's you can't get too elaborate with the structure of it, because everyone in here is wired differently. Everyone has a different kind of karma, different kind of. Some people are dealing with depression all the time. Some people don't even know what that means. They're not even sure what people mean by depression, because they don't really experience something that resonates. Other people are worried about other things. So there's just so many different layers. And so when it comes to something like subconscious gossip, that's going to show up. It's just a word to help us access gossip. It's like useless stuff going back and forth. And subconscious means that it's usually out of sight. It's usually just below the surface, rotting around. But you'll notice, especially if you're a meditator, if you sit here long enough, eventually you start to see that stuff start to come up. It's just a lot of chatter. Yes.
So if the thoughts seem to settle down when we're sitting, then that subconscious gossip is bubbling up. How can we work with that without it coming into a story or explaining?
It doesn't matter if it comes into a story or explain it. It only matters. I say this probably in every talk I do. The only thing that matters is awareness. There isn't anything else but awareness. Everything else is what arises in the awareness. The body arises in the awareness. This building, this life, in my case, 77 years, I have that whole history. That's there. Some of it's successful, and some of it I've forgotten about. More?
So if the subconscious gossip is not something not seen, is sort of turning into a story, how can we investigate that without getting hooked?
You don't have to worry about getting hooked. You don't have to try to not get hooked. To try to not get hooked actually is circular, and you will get hooked and not get hooked, and then you'll have success and failure, success and failure. It's circular, and it can go on and on and on and on, and give you the illusion of success and failure, and you will continue to think that somehow, if you can just get a handle on it, how many times do you hear people say, maybe you've said it, if I can just figure this out, stop trying to figure things out. It's circular. If you want to go straight to something, then whatever it is, look right at it and don't add. No math. Don't divide it, judge it. Don't add to it passion. Don't do away with it, aggression. Don't fight with it. Just observe. This is why this practice is so powerful and can actually transform your life. You might have to do a lot of it, so that you can actually stop going to war with everything. Stop fighting with everything. And when you meet people that are at war, you don't meet them with war, even though they might be trying to hook you into their war, because then they feel like they're getting somewhere if they can fight with you. And you also don't go in and talk down to them as if you're this wonderful, peaceful person who never has any who's completely got everything figured out. So you wouldn't approach it that way either. More? Any other questions? Sato?
So the other day I looked at something and I thought I knew what it was, but what I thought it was, I didn't want it to be that, so I took a closer look. And after I looked at it and saw that it wasn't what I thought it was, I kind of set it down, and it almost seemed like that was in its own way putting a lid on that jar.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't know what it is, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
How do I work with that kind of dismissal?
You're doing it. You're doing it already. It just it doesn't feel like an accomplishment. So therefore the question, but the way you're explaining that means that you're very aware of the different positions you were taking on that. You were aware that it was kind of a dismissal. So it's just about awareness. It's not about taking everything to court, and it's not about getting everything to become shipshape so you have no more problems. It's actually a process of just being with everything that's happening. Like our vow, the vow you took not too long ago, be with all things. This doesn't mean be with something that is horrible. I mean, if the house is burning down, I'm not saying be with the house burning down. Get out of it, or call the fire department, or work with it in a responsible way. But be very, very tentative about anything you do. I sometimes saying now, don't do anything unless you have to. And if you don't do anything unless you have to, then as soon as you do approach things that way, then things start to change. You see the way they're developing, and then 10 minutes later, you might say, well, I have to do this. You might not even have that comment, I have to do this. You just be doing it because it's so imminent. You've got to do that. So in your situation there, I think we've all done that. The snake is thinking a snake, a rope is a snake or something like that, where you're afraid of something where you realize you've actually projected onto the rope that it's a snake. And so an interesting area where that's a good way to see that we have projection. Just like the one I've said before, your friend perhaps is coming towards you with a grouchy look on their face. You're not used to that. And then you start going through your own little note cards, what did I say to them? Are they mad at me? I remember I said this to them yesterday. Maybe they thought that I meant them, and on and on. And then when we get to them, then they say, "Oh, are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I just have indigestion. I have a stomach ache." You realize it has nothing to do with you. They don't feel good, but it's so easy to jump to that conclusion and take it personal. That's how sensitive and kind of a little low-level paranoia going on there about everything, that it might be about us. Probably not. Further questions? Yes.
You often say, meet everything where it's at.
Yes.
But you just said, if war comes towards you, don't meet war with war. Mm-hmm. How are those two the same or different?
So what's?
Well, you said meet everything where it's at, but then you just said don't meet war with war.
Don't necessarily mirror back what is coming towards you.
So what is meeting everything where it's at?
Not agreeing with it, not objecting to it, and not looking away is the technical way of describing it as far as these teachings: passion, aggression, ignorance. So it depends on what the war looked like. If it was a person walking across your yard, coming to you with a rake, looking at you, and it's hard to say. You probably would start, what's up, what's wrong, what's going on? You try to pacify the situation. Try to pacify it rather than immediately start to get defensive and mad and reach for your rake. So just, keep it very simple in that way. And it would be hard to give some kind of a recommendation that would work in every situation. So it seems though that less is better. And you could also come back and say, well, if I wait too long, they're going to kill me or something. They might. It's possible.
Well, the challenge seems to be, at least for me, that we have a world that mirrors war and is full of retaliation. I mean, the chemical warfare that just occurred in Syria, and now the speculation is, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to fire bombs over there now?
Yeah.
So we have that mirrored to us all the time, meeting war with war. Mm-hmm. So how do we find some sane way to approach
that kind of situation?
Yes.
So you'll recognize this because I'm saying it quite often, is we'll continue to watch the news and watch reports from what's happening in Syria, but don't necessarily believe or disbelieve anything. Stay as open as you can. We don't really know. We're not there. Some of it might be not exactly correct, and some of it might be. It's hard to say. It's hard to say for sure, but this huge leviathan we call humanity is moving forward with billions of people, and there's some people that are really in charge, and they want we all know there's some people that just want to fight. It's part of their thing they want to do, and there's no way to really stop that thing that's been moving before you were even born. And so, what do I say? I say, do what you can do. Train your mind, as the poet Kabir said in the 17th, 18th, maybe 18th century. If you have a loaded gun inside your heart, how can you have God? Very simple kind of metaphor, but it's like unload these guns. See the warfare in yourself, and see the way that warfare gets fueled from paranoia and fear, because that kind of warfare is kind of bubbling subconsciously under the surface because you're kind of stuffing it. Maybe something happened when you were 10, 12, 13. Maybe it's another lifetime. Maybe it's a future lifetime. Who knows where all this stuff comes from? But there seems to be a lot of sources that are hidden that we can't really see. And I'm not saying believe or disbelieve in anything. What am I saying? Find out who you are. Sit down, hold still. Outside of Buddhism, outside of anything, sit down, hold still, and watch what the mind keeps creating, all kinds of gunk that when we get up off the cushion and we go out into our world, if we've not looked at that carefully, we tend to project that uninspected anger onto others and think it's them, and then we want to fight with them. Quite a bit of that is going on. So I say, train your mind. It's terrible what's happening in Syria, what's happening all over the world. People being killed, disrespected, tortured.
A question from Gyokado up in Minnesota.
Yes.
She asks, how can we not get caught in believing dharmic concepts, like believing in the possibility of self-realization?
Do you believe in that, Gyokado? How long has she been a student of mine?
2 years.
2 years? Sit more. I know she's in that little box. Sit more. Meditate more. Like this. And then watch your concept or your idea about self-realization. Rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall. What sees those concepts, you need to see that. Turn around and look at what's seeing, what's rising. See if you can find a self anywhere. See if you can find some solid me or identity that is stable. You can find something, but it's like looking at a room full of butterflies. Or barn swallows. Yeah, go ahead.
She said she's been a student of yours for 3 years.
That long? Well, you shouldn't even have a question like that. That's low level. I know who I'm talking to. So it's not about believing or disbelieving. It's about seeing that you're doing that. Because if you just spread the awareness out, it's like hot butter. Put it everywhere. Put it on everything. So you can see what this world is. That most of what's happening in this world, if not all of it, is your projection of it. If you see that you're actually taking your own ideas and projecting it out on the world, and then that's what you think is out there. But actually, that is not complete. You need to look at it some more. It's not about getting rid of the belief. When I say don't believe, don't disbelieve, I say don't believe your thoughts. And all I'm doing is making a suggestion to bring your awareness to the thought patterns to see that you can't help but get attached to them. So it's not about stopping. We have no say-so about that. That's why we ignore it so much. That's why we say, I need to take a pill. I need to jog. I need to go to the beach. I need to change my name. I need to change my sex. I need to do something to have some control. And what do I say? Don't do anything unless you have to. And then if you absolutely have to do it, at least it's coming out of some really strong feeling or idea or whatever it may be. At least you're operating out of cause and effect rather than just taking pot shots. It's like problems with my wrist that I've had, which I forgot to put my brace back on. But I don't want to just take guesses at it. Say, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I want to know. I don't want somebody to do, if my memory's not working, so we're going to do brain surgery. What's that? It's just the assumption that your memory is in your brain. There's no proof of that. Maybe my memory, maybe your memory is, at some point they'll find out, okay, now we know that the consciousness actually is about 18 and a half feet in diameter, and it surrounds you. It isn't in your brain, but they haven't discovered that yet, have they? Don't tell anybody. Let them figure it out. See what I'm saying? I'm saying there's so much that's not done, just like at one point the Earth was flat. No, it wasn't. It's never been flat. It's never been round. It doesn't have a shape. Do you believe me? Believe anything. So just the idea here is just for everyone to encourage you to be as aware as you can, strengthen the awareness and the way we do that is to hold still and keep the awareness exercise very, very simple so that you actually are beginning to, you could say, stretch or lengthen or increase the power of the witnessing part, of the seeing part of the mind, rather than just the thinking part. The thinking part is muscle bound. Thinking part is already, especially if you're very intellectual and or if you work with concepts constantly, it's more attempting to go in and really strengthen the thinking process. It's called worrying. You're strengthening that. Worry once, and then stop. And of course, can't really do that. But if you train the mind, you sit down and train the mind, then it has, because you're slowly converting your awareness from the Velcro of the thought process over to the open dimension of awareness. It's like you moved out of the metaphor I use quite often as a broom. Instead of living in a broom closet, which most people are doing, their ideas, their opinions, their thoughts, their hopes, their fears, their cell phone, and their iPad, or maybe a laptop. They're all in there, and then I think there's usually a toilet in there, refrigerator. The room's getting bigger. Or you could live in an open dimension. You could live in a completely open dimension where you didn't grasp or collect anything, or you weren't really concerned about having a lot of paraphernalia in terms of concepts or ideas, or having a lot of things to hide behind. You have a question?
Yeah, Michael Worthington from Battle Creek Care asks, is awareness just perception?
2 words for the same thing.
How do we motivate ourselves to look at our concepts when it's painful to do so?
So you've already started, because if you're able to actually ask that question, that means you have taken a look, and you can look at it, and there's some kind of painful quality. The downside is it's painful. The upside is you're actually working with what you need to look at. So in that situation, I would just say more of the same. Just continue to do that. Nothing lasts. So anytime any of you have done anything, whether it's done something it's a hobby, or you jog all the time, or you do something that's always, you're doing it over and over and over again, if you do it enough, you'll see that there's no way you can do it the same way twice. Even if it's something you've done hundreds and hundreds of times, whether it's play baseball or anything you do, there's always some difference and variation that's happening. Same thing with that kind of thing. Every time you look at it, it might, for a while, it might look like the same thing, but if you continue to what? In this case, just observe, you'll see that it's always changing in some way. More.
Or I suppose I'm wondering how to go deeper into things that seem the most painful, or like if I look at a concept, it seems like I bounce out of them. If I start to bring any awareness to it, that the pain overrides my will to go deeper.
Are you talking about the sitting meditation or post meditation and meditation action or
Sitting mostly.
sitting? One of the things, and you've probably heard me say this before, is if you've got a word that covers that area, write that down, put it next to you, and then sit and just do shikantaza, or just a simple mindfulness awareness practice that we're doing this morning. Just watching what moves. Thoughts come and go, we watch them. Breath comes and goes, we watch it. Birds outside chirp and say, and the birds are saying, well, just have patience. It's going to get warmer. You hear them say, especially the cardinals. You ever notice cardinals never whine? You never hear a cardinal go, Jesus Christ. What's this weather about? You don't say that. Human beings do that. You whine about it. But birds are just, yay! Yay! Well, happy little birds? Yeah, they're happy. So, just a little bit further with that is if you got one or two words that refer to that, and then put it next to you so that you can use, instead of hiding behind the concept, you're actually going to use the concept the other way around to help you go back towards it. It sounds like it's already has enough texture and bad odor to it, to use that sense. You just don't even want to look at it. So use the concept to gently promote, suggest that you go back and look at that difficult area. So you could sit for 20 minutes and just reach down, pick up the card, look at the concept, and if you need to keep looking at it and look at the way that, while that concept is something, it's just like a menu in a meal, or a recipe in a meal, the concept and then the actual thing that's being referred to. Juju.
With the title being Sleeping Behind Concepts, I think you mentioned earlier we use concepts to kind of protect ourselves.
We do.
How can we look, or how can we see that what we're trying to protect is not real?
So in this question is very basic, and it's about the identity. And so it's bring some of that awareness, maybe not all, but bring some of that awareness back and try to find the observer. The traditional way this is done is to do it by breaking the observer down into the five skandhas: form, body, feeling. We have feelings, all kinds of nerve endings everywhere. Form, feeling, perception. We receive not only feelings, but sights, sounds, smells, tastes. We receive thoughts. Form, feeling, perception. Concepts, what we were talking about hiding behind. The ideas, the names about things, those tend to come up along with that. And then the six sense fields and their objects, the sense sounds and the sense of sound, smells, the sense of smell, taste, and so on. So all of that can be, you can look at the parts of that, and the traditional way to do that and say, ask yourself, where is myself? Where is my identity? Where's myself? Is it in the body? We can't really find it. Is it in the feelings? Is it in the perceptions? And just methodically go back and forth through that. See if you can find a locus that is actually someone. And to do that several times, I think, is helpful. It doesn't break things apart, but it helps us to see that things are already discontinuous. We tend to bring things together and compact them. It's like making a snowball. We tend to take things that are all over the place and we form it. And it has a form as long as there's hope and fear going on. Then we're hoping things are going to get better, and we're afraid they're going to get worse, and we're operating out of that. So we keep kind of bringing things together in an identity, and we have a name, and we have a history, we have a memory of what's happened. So it's a very complicated area that if we bring the awareness into that and just kind of take it apart using concepts, that's not particularly hiding behind them. It's seeing the way the concepts are covering up something there. So looking at it, see if you can find a self there. Yes.
It seems like if I even start to go in that area, even if I can't find a self or something,
Yes.
there's still an assumption behind that oh, I'm just not looking hard enough. There's still something there.
Yeah.
There's a self there. So how do
Sounds
I do
good.
that?
Just keep doing that. That's all that is it's like being out on the trail and you're walking, you're seeing a path, you're following. In our case, it would be the Buddhist path of meditation. But you're out on a path and you're seeing obstacles and bumps and it gets dark and then bad weather comes and then you have all kinds of things to step over and you have whatever sinkholes and timber wolves run in front of you. Hopefully they keep going. But you have to use those metaphors. It's just difficult. So what I'm hearing you say, if I thought that you weren't moving in a direction that would help you and fundamentally help you see more deeply into that, then I would say, but it looks like you're doing okay. It's a matter of repetition. Keep doing it. Keep looking at it that way, and notice that nothing lasts. That the very conclusion you've come to, which is a conclusion, is actually it's just made up. It's invented. Nothing concludes. It just looks like it does. Yes.
From Shane in California.
Shane.
When the allegiance changes over, will there be anyone there who's aware that it's occurred?
There's an awareness that there's a different kind of seeing or different kind of experiencing going on, but there's no experiencer. It doesn't mean that you don't respond if somebody calls your name, or doesn't mean that if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you're just such a wonderful angel that you don't get irritated. You can still get irritated. You still have emotions. The presumption that someone who has realized something on this particular spiritual path, they no longer have feelings, and they're just kind of some kind of serene dodo bird that doesn't have any feelings. I'm always happy because I meditate. It's not the case. It might be that you actually are finally, after 20, 30, 40 years, where you're finally starting to really relate to your emotions, your feelings very, very directly. All through hiding out from anything, all through hiding behind concepts, all through hiding out. You're going to meet everything face on, not in a warlike stance, but just in a meet it where it's at. Meet it if it's whatever it's doing. Meet it where it's at. Don't object. Don't agree. Don't look away. Yes.
Sanhao has a couple of questions, and we need to move
Yes.
on. He asks, actually it's 3 parts. How are concepts helpful? How do we not get caught up in them? How do we know we're not getting caught up in them?
Yeah. So to start with the last one, it's just a matter of being aware of it. And Sanho is a very, not a compliment at all, but just a description. Sanho is a very conceptual fellow. If any of you have ever talked to him for any length of time, you know that he has a really good hold of using concepts. He's very helpful in the book studies that we have when he engages, as long as he can remember not to teach. That's my job. So, but I would say it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of looking. It's a matter of practice. So it's not about not getting caught up in it. It's about watching yourself get caught up until what fuels that grasping, what fuels that anger, that rejection. They start to see the fuel lines and they start to melt, because they can't. Those fuel lines of passion, aggression, and ignorance can't hold up under the, say, scrutiny of your attention, your awareness. The Sanskrit word is your prajna, your wisdom mind. Your wisdom mind doesn't take a position on anything, but it doesn't miss anything. If you start as soon as you take a position on anything, you miss everything else because you're busy maintaining your position. And that's fine. That might work for 40 years. Might work for 70 years. But everything dies. Nothing lasts. I don't want to end on such a negative note. I could also say that, what could I say? It's uplifting. Don't worry, be happy. How's that? And you can, you actually can just smile. In the midst of, if you notice it, I'm not talking about acting or putting on. I'm saying you're in a room by yourself, you're in your hallway, you're walking on, you're not feeling so good about something. Just change your body, change your attitude. Just change. Life circumstances are changing you all the time. If you notice that, these thoughts, these feelings, these visions, these sounds, this taste, this smell is yours. Insofar as there is a you, but you could just change, and don't particularly succumb to some kind of interior tornado that's trying to run you over like a Mack truck. Just be here. Just be in these senses. Very simple. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our yellow chant books. Also, again, I'll remind everybody about the donation boxes that are in the hallway. And if you are able to stay for the daily Dharma gathering, please, we only have a couple of minutes. And in white Tara is Brittany, who is our host. So if you've got stuff in there you've got to get, you might want to do it quickly. Thank you.
She's on the other computer.
Yes.
Oh, how nice.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. The three worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.